Welcome to the Magenta Mix Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Magenta. On this show, we explore three pillars that drive organizational success: purpose, strategy, and culture. Each episode features a leader advancing these ideas in bold yet practical ways. Today, I'm joined by the founder and CEO of One Huddle, a workforce technology company reshaping how employees learn and stay engaged. He's also the author of Wasted Talent, one of the most important books on the future of work. We're going to dig into what is broken in today's workforce, what leaders need to rethink, and how culture fuels strategy. Everybody, please welcome our guest, Sam. Sam, it is really good to have you here. And I know that our viewers and listeners are going to be interested in your story. I thought we'd start with you sharing how you first founded One Huddle and what you saw in the workforce that led you to build the platform.
Gary, great. Absolutely great to be here with you. One Huddle, the journey to create it was, I spent my career in business development and all the stops I made along the way. Grew up in South Florida. Actually, my first job, I don't know if I ever told you, worked in a public school as a football coach. So
really, no, I didn't know that.
Started as a football coach, Hialeah High School, for all those that know, in South Florida, and went from sports to business development roles at a few different stops. And what got me inspired to start One Huddle was I just spent way too much time in those hands-on. We brought in Zig Ziglar, we brought in Dale Carnegie. We sat through our fair share of sales trainings over the years, and it was getting harder and harder in many ways to onboard, upskill, roll out new trainings for new hires. And my initial idea was, how do we do this better? How do we create a technology that can not just be used to onboard and train up and continuously develop a seller better, but also do it in a way that was engaging. You build a technology that workers will go to and not always feel like they're being forced into. And the rest is history. But that's really what inspired it, was this focus on making development something that's more effective and more engaging.
All right. So I just want to be clear, though. One Huddle is focused on people development, but it's not exclusive to sales. You're working with every type of team member. Is that right?
Yes. And that's the best part of the story, because we started in sales and business development. And when we started to expand, our first few clients used us were Madison Square Garden, Monumental Sports and Entertainment, Lowe's Hotels. And the primary use was traditional white collar, college educated workforces. And it became really clear to me really quickly that there was a missed opportunity within these organizations where only a fraction were getting access to a technology like ours. And, so we started digging more, and, that really drove us to expand not just the product, but expand our focus area to create a world where every worker can compete. And today, to your point, we work with frontline workforces from healthcare to manufacturing to retail to hospitality to government. And but again, it started, it didn't start out that way. It evolved as we really looked at the workforce and elbowed up to the front line and saw where, frankly, there's missed opportunity that organizations were looking past.
Yeah, you said something really important there, which is where every worker can compete. And I love that, because you were competing within the organizations we work in now. We're competing in a greater workforce for the next job. And we have to be at our best. I'm assuming that's what we mean when we say compete. We have to be at our personal and professional best to compete. And your book, which was really the impetus for you to come on today, your book, Wasted Talent, argues that the future of work, which is supposed to be focused on helping people be at their best, hasn't lived up to its promise. So how does this concept of the future of work and wasted talent, how does that relate to organizations achieving their purpose? How does it relate to them accomplishing their strategic objectives? How does it relate to them fully actualizing or realizing the culture that they're trying to create?
I think it's all about your people, period. And, in the book, I make this point. And one of the things that the journey I went on in writing the book, and you've written a bunch, this was kind of my first endeavor. And I say the hardest part about writing the book was stopping, not starting, because every day, the news cycle, every day, what we see in our workforce and our communities was something that affected this conversation. And the reality of work today is it's not working for most workers. We're living in this moment where we talk a lot about the future of work. And in the book, I really wanted to explore the reality of work today. And to answer your question, we have to look at realities of work that affect workers. And if we're talking about all workers, only 1 in 3 American workers have a college degree. That means 2 in 3 don't. The overwhelming majority of those workers are a $400 parking ticket away from poverty. The realities of work for workers on the front line isn't that they're working one job, but that they're working 2 or 3. I explored topics like mass incarceration and poverty and wages and how human resources can react in this moment and how education plays a role at the table here. What about government's impact on labor, today? So, in answering your question and exploring this reality of work, if we think about organizational purpose and strategy and culture, companies, I haven't met a company yet that doesn't have a mission statement. I haven't met one that doesn't have some set of words on a wall somewhere that at some point in time was created.
The question is how many of those companies have a workforce that knows what that purpose or mission statement is.
Right. The purpose, it becomes a poster on the wall, not a practice on the floor. And poor culture results in not getting the full talent and skill set of the people that come to work every day. And, the interlock here around purpose is if we see our people, we can better not just communicate but we can affect our workers in a positive manner. And the strategic spillover of misaligned purpose is companies having to buy talent at an exponential rate versus building it. The cost to build talent internally, is a much better investment than, whatever it said, that 5 times more expensive to go outside of your 4 walls to recruit talent. So again, in not seeing our people, by not effectively communicating our purpose, it results in an environment where the strategic decision-making is this turnover, churn, burn cycle, which in this moment of where AI is affecting skills, jobs are shifting, companies cannot afford to continue to be in a constant state of turnover. It's not good for business, and it's absolutely not good for your people.
So how do you see leadership behaviors and organizational culture needing to shift? You're saying it's broken, right? We need to get talent fully unlocked rather than wasted, or our existing talent fully unlocked versus having to spend that time and money getting it elsewhere. So how do you see leadership and organizational culture needing to shift to accomplish that?
One of the stories in the book that I talked to, and it's a one huddle story, was about a team member at a hotel brand that her name was Michelle. Michelle worked in housekeeping. Michelle worked for nearly 15 years for this specific hotel brand, always in a housekeeping role. Believe she worked the 5th floor, as I talk about it. She worked the 5th floor, pushing the heavy toiletry cart up and down the long hallway day after day after day. And the organization began an initiative to invest in offering pathwaying and skilling opportunities to all workers, regardless of role, for all pathways, which means If I work in housekeeping, I don't just get skilling and educational opportunities for housekeeping. I can become a manager or service training or work in the spa or play games on bartending. And this specific team member, Michelle, became the #1 ranked employee globally for this brand on their Spirit Knowledge games for One Huddle.
Okay, so back up. For those listening, they may not know that One Huddle is a game-based platform. So just share a little bit about how Michelle would have gotten access to what, and how did it help advance her career?
Sure. So, for One Huddle, we are, our medium is a game. So when we are, our platform at its core uses quick burst trivia games as the way to transfer knowledge, upskill, reskill, and cross-skill workers. So in this specific environment, Michelle in housekeeping was afforded the opportunity to access One Huddle. By the way, mobile first application in a world where not all talent technologies are mobile first. So we can meet Michelle in the flow of work wherever she was. And so Michelle accessed on the go. She then was able to voluntarily explore skill games on whatever topic within the brand she was interested in. And she happened to be interested in potentially working in, food and beverage. She explored their spirit games, their steps of service games, and Michelle's role rose to the #1 position globally for the brand, caught the attention of their talent team. And because they afforded their people that leadership behavior of allowing everyone equal access, and because of the culture of allowing workers to look to their left or look to their right to upskill, reskill, cross-skill on things that they are into, they were able to identify Michelle. And guess what? They lateraled Michelle. They didn't turn over Michelle. Michelle lateraled to a frontline bartending role where she still works today, and she's moved up through their workforce, earning a significantly higher hourly wage than she was.
I was just going to say, you said she lateraled. Well, are housekeepers and bartenders including their tip at the same comp level, or did she immediately get a boost?
Well, she in her role, immediately got a different, I would say, a boost insofar as the hours she was working. She got a change in her work schedule, and then as she transitioned through their internal development program, moved into a role that pays significantly higher than what she was budgeting and planning in a housekeeping role.
So what I hear you saying, and when we ask about organizational culture needing to shift, or even leadership needing to shift, there's two things that I'm hearing you say here. One is give people access to development, and maybe even in an informal way. Nobody required her to do this. She pulled for it. And give people access to develop themselves, and from a culture standpoint, really be looking for talent in non-traditional places. It wouldn't be traditional to be looking for your next bartender, if you will, in housekeeping. And here this person was able to demonstrate capability and be promoted, if you will, into that position because she was noticed. They gave her the opportunity to engage, and then somebody was watching, looking for it. How would you say that differently, or how would you change that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you're giving people, I think it starts with recognition, recognizing that you have talent. Here's one for you. The fact that organizations today, or some organizations, call workers unskilled, and words matter. But I don't think there is a worse thing that you can call a worker at any level in our workforce than unskilled, especially at a time when organizations may not always do a great job at measuring what skills or assessing what skills they have. There's a lot of opportunity there. But to simply call a worker unskilled speaks to the culture within that organization where they don't value the specific talents of their people. So I think it comes down to recognition, recognizing that there are Michelles within your organization who may be in a role, but into another role. So you first got to start by seeing them before you can ever unlock them. And then I'd say the second piece here is being willing to reinvesting in talent continuously, because as you know, and your listeners know, the jobs today, the tasks that make up the specific functions of a job role, they change, and they are changing at an accelerating rate. And over the next decade or 2 decades, most organizations will struggle to evaluate or predict what skills they will be in need of or what skills they will be short on. So organizations need to be have an infrastructure to continuously reinvest in their people beyond just the once-a-year compliance program, beyond just onboarding. And that is a major cultural shift for an organization to make.
Yeah. This concept around work is not working, how do you put it? You said it really well when I talked to you the other day. What's the expression you're using?
Yeah, work is not working for most people.
Yes, work is not working for most people. And we just talked about a really good case study where work is working for that person because she had an opportunity to learn and she was recognized. Let's talk about that a little bit broader. In what ways can business strategy and people strategy be more tightly aligned? And how does a company begin that journey? If your premise is, and your book, Wasted Talent, argues that work is not working, in what ways can business strategy and people strategy be more tightly aligned so it does work?
Yeah, it's a great question, Gary. I think there are silos that exist within organizations, and one of the silos that has really cordoned itself off from others sits within the HR function. Within the human resource function, there are a lot of responsibilities that cross a very large surface area for an organization. And learning and development, training, those functions, this is where they live within that pillar of an organization.
Yeah.
The challenge is that the information that that business unit needs in order to perform at a high level, to either buy or create new content, to deploy change initiatives, to make technology decisions and investment decisions, that information is sitting on the front line, and the ones closest to that point of contact are either the frontline worker and or the frontline manager. But because that group sits so far away, it doesn't get access to that information and that data. So I believe that the change that's needed is that we need to decentralize, and I'm going to call it the skilling function. I'm not going to call it learning. I'm not going to call it training. I think that organizations have a skilling function that's necessary today, and it needs to be decentralized from one unit, and all business units need to have their skill building proficiencies raised. And that action will ensure that we're creating a workforce where those closest to talent are able to react quickly. It will free up other functions within the organization to do higher order skilling functions, whether that's coaching or mentorship. But a single point of potential failure is not able to move fast enough in today's workforce. So the strategic change for me is to think about skilling as its own function that crosses over multiple business units within an organization, and it can't just be isolated and embargoed to one office within the HR function.
Well, it actually just led to the question I was going to ask. Well, whose job is it? So I love this idea of skilling. I think people talk about training. They don't necessarily talk about skilling. So I love the term, and I'm curious about how you see what you see the definition as, or is it a different definition between training and skilling? But before we get to that, whose job is this? Is this HR? Is it learning, training, communication? Is it the manager of a department or a function? where does this responsibility belong? Because clearly the way you see it happening is not being done today at scale.
No, I think that there needs to be a new C-level role that's created. There's a lot of talk today about a chief productivity officer role where, the HR function and several other functions, bubble up. I don't know if the answer is that a productivity officer, but we do need a. When I played sports and I coached sports, Gary, we had this setup where there was a head strength and conditioning coach, and the role was also known as the head performance coach. And that person's function every day of the week was make you run faster, make you jump higher, make you stronger, more conditioned, ready to play. Down the hall was the athletic trainer's office. And the athletic trainer's job was to make sure we didn't get hurt, keep us in compliance, make sure that we're healthy. But they weren't motivated to max out our bench or weren't motivated to run the fastest 40. And that function of a performance officer that's thinking about enhancing skill sets, enhancing performance, putting people in positions so that the skill coaches, the actual chief revenue officers or operations roles, they can make better decisions on how to utilize talent. That's not the job of the performance coach. Performance coach's job is to take you from where you are to get you where you can be. And they aren't concerned with, well, do they interact with the athletic trainer? Sure. Do they talk? Absolutely. They got to make sure that they're not putting anybody at risk or putting them in a bad position. But one person's job is to keep you on the field performing at a high level. The other one is not concerned with that specifically. So, that's where I think of this skilling role, C-level seat at the table.
Okay. So you're seeing it as a very separate function with a separate owner, and it actually goes up it would ladder up into how are we performing overall as an organization?
Absolutely. And, you asked about the difference between training and skilling. And, today, the function of training is past tense. You were trained. Are you trained? Yeah, I'm trained. I was trained. I went through onboarding. I got through, training. A certain experience. And that stuff is important. Not that is an important part of the puzzle. That piece, though, is traditionally measured not by performance, but by participation. I mean, that function is, did you sit through it? Did you get through attendance? We're giving A's for showing up to class, not getting A's.
Did you check the box? Good.
Yeah, and I think that when you talk about skills, we have to put more, again, we have to utilize, it forces us to use technology to assess what skills we have, what skills what are we short on? What are we long on? Also to identify what are the interest levels of our workforce. I mentioned the Michelle story. Michelle was in housekeeping, but she was into something else. So if she wasn't performing at a high level, it wouldn't be fair to call her unskilled as a housekeeper. She was very skilled and able, but she wasn't giving you her all in that moment. That is not a skill issue.
Well, so it's interesting you're saying this, because I always view the role of any really engaged and good leader as identifying the skills, capabilities, and passions of their team members and matching those to the needs of the business. So, but we know that that's not consistently delivered by leaders today. So is this one huddle solution, does it augment that? Does it augment leaders who are not delivering to that? Does it help them? Does it bypass them? Where do you see it fitting?
Speaking to one huddle specifically, and one thing I've learned along the way doing this is that this is not an either or, this is an and in this moment. Organizations need to have a stack mentality when it comes to talent, skilling, and development. This is not the 4-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, body wash, and mouthwash, thing. None of those work. They don't. So I don't, and I get nervous when I see someone that has those in their bathroom. But we need 4 great products that integrate, interconnect, of course, but we need to utilize great products for assessment, great products for onboarding, great products for compliance, great products for continuous skill development. I think to double click on your question around skills, it's identifying, it's not just so much, skills are the first piece, but it's also, like you mentioned, what are you voluntarily interested in? And that's what One Huddle is great at. 71% of our gameplay year to date by frontline workers are on games or topics that are not related to their current job function.
So I want to pause you here because you used a really interesting expression there, voluntarily, right? So you want to voluntarily, but is that the same as what I said before in that what are your employees' interests and passions and how do you align them with the business? Voluntary means it's not my area of expertise or function in the business, but I'm interested in, I'm volunteering my discretionary effort, my time to go explore that. Is that what we mean by voluntary?
Yes.
Okay.
And here's another worker. I'll tell you, we got a team member who he's our number 5 top player globally on One Huddle. His name is Dennis. He works in hospitality for a hotel brand and pretty popular one in Orlando. And I asked Dennis one day, because he's played 34,000 games. So it's like 34. I mean, it's a lot of games on a platform like ours over 4 years. He's on a 140 plus week streak. And I asked him when I was on premise recently, I asked, why do you play? Because it's, by the way, the majority of those games are voluntary. The majority of that activity is above and beyond the expectation that they use the platform for. And he said, I like to walk in every day. And I like to go up to the concierge desk. And he's like, I like to show the young bucks that I know more about. I know what they're doing.
So hey, there's a lot to unpack in that story. Dennis, did you say is his name?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Dennis has got an interesting story. If he's playing that many games, I'm assuming he's playing a lot of them not on work time.
Correct.
Yeah. So what is the norm there? Are people playing the games, which again are themes where they're upskilling? So these games have themes or subjects, and the games are meant to help upskill. Are they normally played during work hours? What are your customers, the client, what do they expect from their team members here?
Sure. And in the book, I talk a lot about this around government. This is one of those points around government's role in work today, because the way we define what is compensable training time and not is very clearly defined under the Fair Labor Standard Act, which is the kind of crowning piece of legislation overseeing federal labor rules.
Yes.
So today, organizations are required to compensate workers for company-specific, what's considered non-transferable skills. I have a different point of view on that, which would require extra time. But they are considered company-specific training non-transferable. And because of that, you always have to pay the worker for that time when it's done. However, any training or education or skilling that is non-transferable, how to open a bank account, a game on Black History Month, maybe it's a training you're deploying around the holiday season, that is not company specific, it is transferable. You can always afford your people access to those at any time. On their time, because it's a career development opportunity.
So if it's very specific, like how do I make a bed at ABC Hotel, I can't require you or ask you to do that outside of work hours because it's non-transferable. But there are plenty of topics that I can take to my next job with me that I can play as many hours as I want, and that's my choice. And the business is not obligated to compensate me for that time.
Correct. And we spent a lot of time talking to organizations about learning as a benefit. And when you position it as a benefit within your organization, then whether it's One Huddle or other training, skilling, learning, education platforms you utilize, then you can position all of the stuff that relates to a worker's life before they clock in and after they clock out. And when you afford workers at all levels, we spent a lot of time with frontline workers, but like I mentioned, all workers, then they give you more of that discretionary effort when they're clocked in. But robbing workers of continuous personal and professional development opportunities is not just, I think, a bad practice, because we're, as leaders, that's what we care about our people. But it's also not good for business, because, as we mentioned, if you're struggling with your credit score, you're struggling with, eating healthy or eating right. By the way, one of our number one game series during the summer was a game on healthy eating and meditation. And it wasn't specific to the company, but isn't it kind of specific, isn't it?
Well, of course, if I am eating well and taking care of myself, I show up as the best version of myself to work. Yeah, of course. Sam, I am always fascinated by talking to you. I want you to, as we wrap up, talk to us a little bit about Wasted Talent, the book, and what people can learn from it. Very intriguing title, very intriguing premise. What are the takeaways if people were to pick up the book and read it? What would their key takeaways be, or why should they read it?
I think the why they should read it is because at all corners of our community today, whether you are a private sector executive, you're a manager in an organization, you work in a nonprofit, you're a teacher, you're working government, whether you're a worker, by the way, again, at all corners. The big problem that we have today at work is lack of recognition of each other. And when we don't see each other, it results in not just, a failure to access and unlock the best of ourselves at work, which results in higher sales and better service and better growth and lower turnover and all those other important KPIs. But today more than ever, we spend a lot of our time at work. And, what my hope for folks that read the book when they come away from it is they come away, and you may not agree with everything. I go through the history of work. We talk about, first part of the book, Gary, is from Zeus to Gen Z. I felt like we needed a little crash course. So, we started at the beginning. I talk about the 11 realities of work. There may be folks that you might disagree with raising minimum wage. You may disagree with that. That's okay. But let's talk about it. And, I give my points, like any good book, on what I think we can do to move forward. But my ultimate hope for folks when they read the book is they come out of it. And I think back to we talked about hotels a few times today. And I was just at a conference. I know you're at a bunch of stuff all the time, Gary. And, I remember it happened to me the other day. I'm standing in the line at the buffet in between the sessions, and, I'm grabbing my stuff to fill up the plate. And I look to my left, and there's a hospitality team member for that property refilling the plates. And I said, thank you. And my hope is that other people around me see each other. They see people, because again, we can't unlock what we don't see. And if we don't see it, we waste it. In I'm a worker centric capitalist is what I tell people at the end of the day here. Work starts with workers. And if we think that way, we can create a place of work that works for everybody.
I love this idea of that your hope is that people will see others and be seen. Thank you. It's a great message to close on. Sam, if people are interested in learning more about One Huddle or having you come into their organization and talk about wasted talent, whether it's on a podium or with their leadership team, how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. Thanks, Gary. Can head on over to One Huddle. That's the number one, huddle, like a football huddle.co. And the book Wasted Talent is out wherever books are sold.
Awesome. Sam, good to see you. Wishing you and your family the best. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll see you again soon.